Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from March 19th, 2021, and I'm recording this on September 15th, 2021. A little earlier than normal, recording this on a Wednesday just because of life. I give you the date so that you know when this information is most relevant because the market does change rather rapidly at times. And as always, we're also looking back at the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week and the CBSI Hot Top 10. Those are the two lists I use that I look back at. I know there's some others, but these are they give us some books. They give us a variety of books that we can look back at and see what we can learn. And why we do this is because these books were hot. People were jumping on them. The prices were going up. And we want to see what factors made them do that and then how they've done since so that we can all make better decisions about what books of the moment that we're chasing versus ones we're being patient on. So we got 17 books, I believe, this week. And so let's get into this list and see if we can learn anything. So first up, we have a repeat offender from last week. We have Canto #1, and this was still based off the announcement of an animated series, so it hit the list again, second week in a row. Last week, actually, it was also opposite lists, was part of this also as well. Last week, though, it was around $150 for a raw. At this point, it was $200 plus for a raw copy of #1. 9.8 hit $1,200, which was up from around $1,000 plus last week. Now raw copies are $100 to $200. 9.8s are $800 to $1,000. That high 9.8 value still continues to be there because of the damage that was on this book. But this one's been down a little bit. It's definitely a bit of an I'll be back. Still big numbers for a relatively recent book. There's a lot of buzz. A lot of people love this book. But it is definitely down from that peak when that show announcement occurred, which is pretty typical. Next, we have Mystery Girl #1. This was supposedly has been optioned for a Netflix show. An announcement came out that Tiffany Haddish was attached to potentially be a part of it. So raw copies then jumped to $25 to $50. Now they're $10 to $20. And this, again, is pretty typical. A little more of a fallback maybe than normal, but definitely pretty typical. Show gets optioned or you get some sort of announcement about who's going to be cast in it. But the show itself not coming for probably another year plus. So there's a lull. People kind of forget about it. Next, we have kind of an oddball. This is Genlock #6. This was supposedly a very rare book because DC lost the rights and they were supposed to be recalled or destroyed. All these books were supposed to be destroyed. And yeah, it was basically jumped all the way up to a $200 book because people didn't think they'd be able to get one. It's kind of a rare, hard to find thing. And now it's a $25 to $40 book. This turned into a dumpster fire. Apparently a lot of people decided to keep theirs and not destroy them and still try to sell them when they saw they were going for big money. So there's quite a few of these out there. Now only one slab sale. It was a 9.6, went for 90. But yeah, this one definitely, I thought this would be a trap and it was even worse than that. Definitely crashed back down to earth on this particular book from those really high sales that were going on. Next we have Saban's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #1, first appearance of Power Rangers in comics. This hit the list because there was supposedly there was a toy convention going on, and supposedly there was going to be a new line of Power Rangers toys that were going to be released or shown at this thing, which caused this book to jump up to $70 for raw copy. 9.8 was hitting $500 to almost $600. I'll be honest, I'm surprised this goes for as little as it is with some of the other Power Rangers books, but I think this is probably pretty high print. And this book has come back down considerably, $10 to $50 depending on condition for a raw copy. 9.8 will run you about $300, so about half. So another one that's kind of turned into a trap from those spike. I'm not sure why people jumped on it because of a new round of toys. It's not like there's not been toys before. So this was kind of an odd spike, but definitely a book that has come crashing back down from that spike. Next, we're going to move into our covers. We got 5 covers on the list this week. First up, we have Harley Quinn #1, the Yasutake green variant. So I think there's like a pink version of this, but this was the 1 per store green one that hit the list. It was going for $90 to $125 right off the bat. even technically the week it was hitting the list was before the week it was supposed to come out, but people had gotten it early and it was already being sold on the secondary market for big money for this particular one per store. Now it's 50 to 120, so it is kind of an I'll be back, but actually in that same still range. So, but this is kind of steady. 9.8 will cost you $200 to $300, which for a $100-ish book, that seems about right. Maybe a little low, but so still a lot of interest in this book. Kind of a cool cover, kind of a little different take, kind of a Japanese kind of style to this Harley Quinn cover, but still definitely quite a bit of demand for it. Next, we have Pop Kill #1, the Adam Hughes Kickstarter variant, and this has been on the list multiple times. Last week, we talked about it at $200 to $250. By this point, it was up to $300 for a raw copy. Now it's a $500 to $600 for a raw copy. 9.8s are $750 to $950. Yeah, this book is a cover that people want and they're willing to spend big money on, and it just kind of keeps creeping up. It's what it's done over the last 6 months. Next, we have Dynamite #2. This is a Dr. Seuss homage. Back then, raw copies jumped up to $30 to $35 because people were trying to grab this because Dr. Seuss was getting canceled because a couple of his books were being pulled and weren't going to be printed anymore. But this didn't actually have anything to do with that. It was just a homage to a Dr. Seuss, but yet people were willing to pay $30, $35 for this. I called this a trap back then. Now it's a $10 to $20 book, which still seems like a lot for this particular homage, unless you really want the book. There's other Dr. Seuss homages out there. It was kind of a weird reason to go after this book because this book wasn't getting canceled or anything. It was just some controversy around Dr. Seuss himself. Anyway, kind of the same thing for our next book. This is Starfire #6, the Pepe Le Pew variant. And basically this was based on the decision to pull him from the new Space Jam movie and some other stuff because, well, let's be honest, Pepe's been trying to force himself on that cat for a long time. So that's no longer really considered kosher, I guess. Anyway, they were canceling Pepe, so we had to get this book. People were spending $50 on this thing. 9.8 was going for $200. Now raw copies. Again, it's not like these are hard to find necessarily. Raw copies now are $20 to $30. 9.8 did still sell for $200, but that's just the one sale in the last 6 months. So yeah, this one's another one that almost the vast majority of the sales are raw copies and turned into a bit of a trap. A lot of books, as you're going to notice, there's a theme. Most everything is down this week. Next, we have Marvel #6, the Lee Bermejo 1 in 25 variant, Silver Surfer. Gorgeous book. Raw copies right out of the gate. We're going for $125 to $150. Didn't hold though, which is surprising. Normally, if a 1 in 25 jumps this far, it holds a little better than this. This one did not. It's down to a $40 to $80 book, which is still double to triple ratio for 1 in 25, which is still really good. 6 months later, just not that peak. 9.8s are now running $150 to $225, so just above that peak value that it was going for back then. Next, we're going to move into Ultimate Fallout 4, the second print A cover. Back then, this book had, like everything Miles, summer of 20, it jumped really high. Winter of 20 and 21, it had kind of, by December, it had kind of fallen back. And then last spring, it really started jumping again. And this one was back up to a $1,000 book for 9.8 of the second print. So that is why it hit the list, which was up from $600 just the month previous. Raw copies now are $100 to $150. 9.8s are down to about $650 to $725. So this has definitely turned into a bit of an I'll be back. Pretty high for a second print, what it was going for, really even compared to where the first print was at. This seems to be a little more reasonable distribution in the price. And now it has the facsimile to compete with as well. So there's a bunch of different versions of this book. Next, we have New Gods #7, first appearance of Steppenwolf, and this had to do with the Snyder Cut coming out and everything else. Raw copies for this were up to $130 back then. 9.8s were at $1,300. Seemed like definitely an I'll be back as he moved away from the movie. Why would, Steppenwolf was going to be forgotten, and he has been. Now raw copies only $20 to $60. 9.4 was as close as I could find on a high grade. Cost you $200 to $300, which means probably a 9.8 is probably still around $1,000. But yeah, definitely down from where it was, especially for all those raw copies that are selling. Next we have X-Men number 4, first appearance of Omega Red, and this is kind of like all the Mephisto spec back in the spring. Everybody was like, Omega Red's going to be in Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Omega Red's going to be in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He was not. But because of the rumors, this book, raw copies were up to $50. 9.8 was at $350 to $400 for the direct edition. Now raw copy will cost you $20 to $40. 9.8 will cost you $200 to $250. So this one's definitely well down after doubling between February and March because the people thought, he was going to appear, and then he didn't. This one's back down to kind of where it was at in January, February of last year. Or of this year, sorry. Next, we got the last 5 books all also have to do with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. First, we have Captain America, Sam Wilson, number 3, the first appearance of Joaquin Torres as the new Falcon. Basically, we saw him in the show, so people were like, he's going to be the new Falcon. So this jumped up to $100 for a raw copy of this book. We did see him kind of get the wings, but he didn't actually become Falcon in the show. So now it's a $15 to $30 book. 9.8 is going to cost you about $250. So this turned into a bit of a trap in terms of, values compared to what it was back then when the show was coming out. Now might be a decent time to invest in it because we know there's going to be a Captain America 4, so there might be a chance you'd see this character again. We'll see. Next up, we have Truth, Red, White, and Black, number 1. First appearance of Isaiah Bradley. This was before he actually appeared in Falcon and the Winter Soldier when it hit this list. And the spec was that he was going to be a part of it. Raw copies jumped up to $40 to $50. 9.8s were $250. I called this one worth it, which is probably a bit, because I figured it would go higher if when he appeared, and then it would fall back maybe in this range. It actually fell back a little bit further, $20 to $50 for raw copies. 9.8s now cost you $150 to $200, so it actually fell back a little more than I expected, or maybe it just didn't go as high. I can't remember now, but definitely I'll be back on this one. Next, we have Tales of Suspense, number 75, first appearance of Batroc the Leaper, as well as Agent 13, Sharon Carter. So both of these characters appeared in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It appears Sharon has been set up to be a big part of future storylines as well. So 9.2 back then was hitting 440, which was a new record for 9.2. Now, they didn't give raw prices back then on this particular book, but raw copies now will cost you $50 to $150 basically, depending on condition. But a 9.2 recently went for $900. So the only recent 9.2 sale is $900. So that's double that $440. I mean, you figure for a 1965 book, this book was in 2 character first appearances, including Sharon. That was probably pretty underrated anyway, undervalued. So this book has definitely jumped up. It's been straight cash. Like a lot of books, a lot of keys have climbed this year. This book has definitely been climbing, despite the fact that we're now away from the show a little bit. This one kept going. Next, we have Captain America number 6, the first appearance of the Winter Soldier, the Bucky variant. This was on the list again. It was on the list 2 weeks ago at about $600 for 9.8. At this point, it was at $900 plus for 9.8. Now it's $450 to $500, so about half that for 9.8. Raw copies will cost you $75 to $125. So this one turned into a trap. I'm a little surprised by this. I'm surprised. This book hasn't held better as many times as Bucky has appeared in the MCU. We know he's going to appear some more. Little surprised this book doesn't do better than this compared to some of the books that we see, modern books that we see for characters that haven't even appeared yet and how much they're going for. So it makes you wonder where the long-term value is on some of those if a character like this that's appeared all these times hasn't been able to sustain higher values, particularly on this variant. So And last but not least, this week we have Captain America number 323, first appearance of John Walker. At this point, he was, I think, believed he was called Super Patriot or something, and not U.S. Agent. That was a different book. But his first appearance, we knew he was in the show. He was at least tentatively taking up the mantle of Cap. Back then, raw copies were $60. 9.8 was hitting 700. Now raw copies are 30 to 60. 9.8's 3 to 400. So 9.8 again is about half of what it was. Kind of like with the Winter Soldier book. Raw copies are a little closer, so kind of an all be back to a trap, depending on if you're going for a graded copy or not. But we suspect we'll see John Walker again, although we're not sure when or exactly how we're going to see him. Potentially, everyone thinks they're setting up a Thunderbolts movie. We'll see. So that is this week's list. Pretty dominated by Captain and Winter Soldier stuff and covers. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.